The chamber erupted into tension the moment Rudy Giuliani's words sliced through the air. "You are a mistake." The sentence landed like a sledgehammer, reverberating across the room as cameras clicked and lights flashed, capturing every reaction in stark clarity. Gasps cascaded from journalists, aides, and onlookers alike, some frozen in disbelief, others murmuring under their breath. It was a statement crafted to wound, to provoke, to ignite chaos. But the target, Jasmine Crockett, did not flinch. Crockett sat poised, her posture straight, her hands clasped calmly before her. The world seemed to pause around her. Every eye in the room turned, capturing the subtle twitch of her brow, the quiet strength in her gaze, the faint curve of a smile that suggested something monumental was about to unfold. Giuliani's face twisted with a mix of smug satisfaction and anticipation, certain his words had landed the crushing blow he intended. Yet the audience could feel the shift, the electricity of suspense, the knowledge that this moment was no ordinary confrontation. The cameras moved with cinematic precision, cutting from close-ups of shocked faces to wide angles of the room, highlighting the ripple of tension that spread like wildfire. Reporters' pens hovered above notepads, social media feeds lit up instantly, and millions watching live on screens at home sensed the gravity of the encounter. This wasn't just an insult. It was a battle line drawn, a test of composure, courage, and character. And then, in the midst of the storm, Crockett's calm smile emerged. It was slight, almost imperceptible, but it carried a weight that no words could convey. The room held its breath. Giuliani leaned forward, expecting confrontation. But Crockett's serenity was not weakness, it was preparation, a quiet force ready to turn arrogance into miscalculation. What happened next would not just silence the room, it would shatter expectations nationwide. Every microphone, every camera, every viewer would bear witness to a response that was as precise as it was electrifying. This was the moment where dignity met audacity, where a single smile signaled a tidal shift, and where Jasmine Crockett would prove that composure, courage, and intellect could dismantle even the most brazen attacks. The stage was set, and the nation waited. The tension in the room was more than personal. This was a high-profile political forum, one of the rare occasions where cameras, microphones, and a live audience converged to watch the clash of powerful personalities. Every journalist, every political analyst, every viewer at home understood that Giuliani's words were not just an insult. They were a challenge to the very principles of respect, dignity, and representation. When a figure of his notoriety called Jasmine Crockett a mistake, it wasn't just meant to wound her personally. It was an attempt to question her legitimacy, to undermine her voice in a national conversation already fraught with tension. Across the room, murmurs rippled as reporters whispered to each other, some shaking their heads, others scribbling furiously. Social media feeds lit up in real time, hashtags trending within minutes. Crockett Clapback, mistake moment, political showdown. Opinion pieces were already forming in the minds of viewers. Was this an example of unchecked arrogance? Or would Crockett rise above the bait and redefine the rules of engagement? The eyes of the nation were not just watching. They were judging, waiting for a signal that would shape public perception for weeks, if not months. Giuliani's body language exuded confidence, almost theatrical in its intent. Leaning forward, hands gesturing, he broadcasted certainty, a man convinced that his words had struck a fatal blow. But Crockett remained still, a composed island in a sea of chaos. Her calm was not passive. It was strategic. Every slight nod, every measured breath, every subtle glance communicated control. The world around her was spinning with speculation, yet she was calculating, preparing to respond with precision and power. The stakes could not have been higher. This was more than a clash between two individuals. It was a confrontation about identity and power. A prominent conservative figure attempting to diminish a rising progressive voice, framing her as a misstep in the political landscape, represented an entire societal debate. It was about who gets to speak, whose narratives are validated, and whose dignity is respected. Giuliani's words were a lightning rod, intended to ignite outrage, but they also illuminated the fault lines of political discourse, exposing the vulnerabilities and resilience of those willing to challenge the status quo. And Crockett, seasoned by years of public service and adversity, was ready. She had faced bigger storms, moments where stakes were life-altering, Careers were on the line, and her integrity had been questioned in ways far harsher than a single loaded word. Each challenge had sharpened her resolve, teaching her that words, when wielded correctly, could be transformed into instruments of truth, defiance, and inspiration. She understood the energy in the room, the cameras capturing every motion, every micro-expression, and the millions of viewers poised on the edge of their seats. As Giuliani's voice echoed again, reiterating his demand for deference, Crockett's eyes never wavered. Her mind raced, tracing the history of similar confrontations, the lessons learned from navigating systems built to silence her. She knew the power of timing, the gravity of silence, and the impact of the perfect counter. The room, the nation, and the digital world were holding their collective breath. What happened next wouldn't just answer Giuliani's insult. It would define Crockett's moment and send ripples far beyond the walls of that chamber. Rudy Giuliani was no stranger to the spotlight. From his days as New York City's mayor to his later prominence on national media, he had cultivated a persona built on authority, assertiveness, and relentless self-assurance. Every gesture, every speech, every televised appearance reinforced the image of a man who believed he could command a room simply by occupying it. Giuliani's charisma was undeniable, but it was often paired with a combative edge, a readiness to dominate conversation and dismiss dissent with cutting words or a dismissive smirk. In the public eye, he was both admired and feared. A figure who could turn controversy into ratings and confrontation into spectacle, yet beneath this carefully constructed veneer lay contradictions that few dared to confront, or that many overlooked until they witnessed them firsthand. Giuliani often positioned himself as a champion of leadership, a defender of law, order, and tradition, someone who demanded respect and adherence to principle. But in practice, his approach frequently undermined those very ideals. He praised integrity while publicly belittling those who dared to challenge him. He spoke of fairness while twisting narratives to suit his advantage. Every public exchange carried a tension between the persona he projected and the methods he employed, a tension that sharp observers could detect, even if the broader audience remained captivated by his theatrical confidence. In the weeks leading up to the confrontation with Jasmine Crockett, Giuliani's media presence had been relentless. Headlines praised his decisive voice and commanding presence. Yet on social media, critics dissected each word for arrogance, tone, and implication. Clips of previous debates circulated, showing moments where Giuliani's assertiveness tipped into condescension, his charm devolved into intimidation, and his theatrics overshadowed substance. Analysts noted that while he could control the narrative in one setting, overconfidence often made him blind to emerging dynamics, leaving openings that sharp opponents could exploit. Giuliani's confidence was magnetic. Supporters saw decisiveness, detractors saw overreach. It was this duality that made him simultaneously powerful and vulnerable. In the political theater, he had mastered the art of spectacle, yet spectacle alone could not protect him from the kind of strategic, calm, and prepared opposition that Crockett represented. He relied on predictability, assuming that others would respond emotionally, falter under pressure, or submit to his provocations. History had often reinforced this assumption, and he had internalized it as a law of engagement. But the very traits that had propelled him to national attention now became liabilities. His combative style, once seen as boldness, risked alienating audiences when met with a measured, unflappable counter. His arrogance, once a mark of certainty, left him unprepared for someone who could match poise with precision, who could take insult and convert it into a platform for dignity, strategy, and cultural resonance. Each action he took was an exposition of character, each word a subtle signal to the audience of the imbalance between intention and effect. And so, as Giuliani leaned into the microphone, repeating his dismissive characterization of Crockett, the room watched with a mix of fascination and apprehension. The audience, both live and digital, could sense the tension, the impending collision between spectacle and substance. Giuliani's public persona loomed large, but in that moment, it also cast a shadow over his judgment. He believed he controlled the narrative, yet the very history that had built his reputation hinted at vulnerabilities, cracks waiting to be exposed. Rudy Giuliani had made a career of commanding attention, but he had never faced an opponent who wielded silence, dignity, and strategic timing as weapons. Every gesture he made, every inflection in his voice, signaled his confidence. And yet, unbeknownst to him, it also set the stage for a stunning reversal. The room waited, cameras rolling, eyes fixed, the digital world buzzing in anticipation. But Rudy had no idea who he had provoked. Jasmine Crockett's story was one of relentless determination, of carving a path through corridors of power that were often unwelcoming, and of building a voice rooted in justice, empathy, and unwavering principle. Long before the spotlight ever fell on her, Crockett had dedicated herself to the law, navigating a career defined by advocacy for those whose voices were too often ignored. From her early days as a young attorney to her rise in the public arena, she had cultivated a reputation not merely for intellect, but for a moral clarity that demanded attention. Every brief she filed, every argument she presented, was imbued with a sense of purpose, a recognition that the law was not just rules on paper, but a living framework for justice, fairness, and equality. Her identity as a champion for immigrant-friendly policies and marginalized communities added layers of resonance to her work. Crockett's advocacy was personal, drawn from a deep understanding of the struggles faced by those navigating complex systems of inequality. She had seen firsthand how arrogance, indifference, and unchecked power could silence individuals, erase voices, and perpetuate injustice. It was this perspective, cultivated through years of legal battles and community engagement, that made her uniquely formidable. While some relied on spectacle, Crockett relied on preparation, clarity, and the quiet confidence that comes from experience. In the political arena, Crockett had faced critics who attempted to diminish her voice, undermine her credibility, or twist her words for gain. Yet through every challenge, she maintained a composure that seemed almost instinctual. This calm under fire was not mere temperament. It was forged through decades of navigating adversity, standing up against entrenched power structures, and asserting the dignity of those who often went unheard. Observers noted that her presence commanded attention without demanding it, that her words carried weight precisely because they were measured, deliberate, and grounded in truth. Her journey mirrored, in many ways, the legacies of historic figures who had faced monumental challenges and emerged not only intact, but strengthened. Crockett's approach combined the tactical acumen of a seasoned lawyer with the moral resonance of a public servant committed to justice. She understood that power wielded without principle was hollow, and she sought to embody leadership that was both firm and compassionate. Every action she took in public life was a reflection of this philosophy. Speak with authority, act with integrity, and never surrender the voice of conscience. Beyond the courtroom and legislative chambers, Crockett's identity played a crucial role in shaping her perspective. She drew inspiration from immigrant communities, from stories of resilience and perseverance, and from the belief that representation mattered in spaces historically dominated by the privileged few. Her advocacy was not abstract. It was rooted in lived experience, in the knowledge that each policy, each debate, each public exchange could affect real lives. This grounding in empathy and lived reality lent her words a gravity that could resonate far beyond the immediate moment. As the confrontation with Rudy Giuliani approached, Crockett carried with her a quiet, unshakable confidence. She had anticipated moments of hostility, understood the dynamics of public spectacle, and prepared herself to meet arrogance with strategy, insult with poise. She knew that her strength did not reside in the loudest voice or the harshest attack, but in the integrity, precision, and timing of her response. Every lesson from her career, every instance where she had stood firm against power and prejudice, converged in preparation for this very moment. The admiration Crockett inspired was immediate and palpable. Colleagues, constituents, and even casual observers sensed that she was different, not because she sought to dominate, but because she had mastered the art of influence through principle. Her calm was not passive. It was active, a deliberate assertion of authority and dignity that could disarm, persuade, and command respect in ways that spectacle never could. Those who witnessed her rise saw a figure who could absorb the chaos around her and convert it into focus, a clarity that magnified her presence and amplified her impact. And so, as the cameras trained on her, as Giuliani's words hung in the charged air, Crockett stood prepared. She embodied the culmination of decades of advocacy, resilience, and moral courage. Her background, legal battles fought, communities defended, principles upheld, had uniquely equipped her to respond not with impulsive outrage, but with deliberate, transformative power. Every pause she would take, every glance she would cast, would carry the weight of history and the promise of justice. When she finally spoke, it would not merely be a rebuttal. It would be a declaration of values, a reaffirmation of dignity, and a reminder that courage tempered with strategy could command attention more powerfully than any insult. The room, and the country, would feel the weight of her presence, the gravity of her words, and the unshakable authority of a woman who had been forged by experience and guided by conscience. This was more than a confrontation. It was the convergence of preparation and principle, of history and destiny. Crockett had faced storms before, but the moment she was about to enter demanded more than skill. It demanded the embodiment of the very ideals she had championed throughout her life. And when the time came, she would transform tension into triumph, insult into inspiration, and arrogance into humility, leaving an indelible mark on everyone who witnessed it. The room hummed with tension, a live wire energy that seemed to pulse from camera lens to audience pew. Rudy Giuliani leaned forward, a smirk playing on his lips, voice sharp and venomous as he repeated the insult that had ignited the gathering, calling Jasmine Crockett a mistake. His words ricocheted off the walls, punctuated by nervous laughter and murmurs from allies eager to see him dominate. The crowd shifted uneasily in their seats, caught between fascination and disbelief. Every syllable he spat was a calculated jab, meant to unsettle, to provoke, to demonstrate control. Yet Crockett remained unmoved. Her posture was composed, shoulders squared, hands lightly resting on the podium, eyes calm but alert. She listened as Giuliani circled his rhetorical trap, confident in the power of his theatrics. Each taunt, each smirk, each pointed gesture was met with measured restraint, her silence amplifying the weight of his words in a way he could not anticipate. Observers began to notice the growing dissonance. The more he projected dominance, the more her quietude drew attention. Every pause, every deliberate intake of breath became a silent counterpoint, a subtle assertion that she would not be rattled. Giuliani's allies leaned in, expecting the narrative to bend in his favor. His voice rose, carrying across the hall, dripping with arrogance. He mocked her record, questioned her judgment, and cast aspersions on her credibility, painting her as inexperienced, ill-prepared, and somehow unworthy. Each comment was met with gasps from some, uncomfortable murmurs from others, but Crockett's expression did not falter. There was a rhythm to her calm, an almost magnetic pull that held the room in suspense. It was the quiet storm before the inevitable strike, a lesson in strategic patience that few could recognize in real time. The tension escalated further as Giuliani misjudged the effect of his own words. Thinking he controlled the narrative, he leaned harder into spectacle, gesturing wildly, his voice cracking with exertion. But the crowd's attention was beginning to shift. Eyes that had tracked his movements now flicked toward Crockett, sensing an unspoken promise of retribution. Social media feeds buzzed with live commentary. Snippets of the exchange were already circulating, viewers noting the juxtaposition. One man yelling, one woman unshaken, the room holding its breath. The higher Giuliani's volume climbed, the more conspicuous his lack of control became. Crockett's strategy was subtle, almost imperceptible. She allowed him to speak, to expend his energy, to reveal the cracks in his overconfidence. Each barb he delivered, each condescending smile, only heightened anticipation. The audience began to lean forward instinctively, drawn into a tension-filled narrative that felt larger than the room itself. This was more than a personal clash. It was a study in power, restraint, and the psychology of confrontation. Every second stretched like elastic. Every glance from Crockett a silent reminder that she would respond on her own terms. And not before Giuliani, sensing a moment of triumph, smirked and gestured as if to claim victory. Yet the momentum was shifting imperceptibly. Crockett's calm was not weakness. It was a quiet force, a psychological counterweight that unsettled even the most seasoned provocateur. The murmurs of the audience grew into a tense collective anticipation, a shared realization that something was about to happen, that the balance of authority in the room was poised to pivot. And then Crockett leaned in, and silence fell like a drumbeat across the hall. Every camera, every eye, every microphone seemed to freeze, capturing the instant before a storm broke. Giuliani's smirk faltered. Allies stiffened. Observers, commentators, and the live audience felt the electric pull of inevitability. This was the threshold of the moment, the hinge upon which the clash would pivot, and the world collectively waited for the words that would change the narrative forever. The air in the room shifted, subtle but unmistakable. Rudy Giuliani, convinced of his dominance, leaned forward again, a smug grin plastered across his face, ready to bask in the perceived triumph of his insults. The audience, still tense from the verbal volley, sensed the impending moment, but could not yet predict its force. Crockett inhaled slowly, a measured breath that signaled the calm before the storm. Her hands rested lightly on the podium, fingers tracing the edges, a quiet, grounding ritual, a ritual that had steadied her through countless courtroom battles and political confrontations alike. This was her stage, and she was about to reclaim it with surgical precision. "Mr. Giuliani," she began, her voice steady even, carrying just enough weight to ripple through the chamber without raising volume unnecessarily. Every ear tuned in, every eye fixed on her. The room seemed to shrink, the ambient noise fading as all focus converged on the woman who had just been called a mistake. She paused, letting the weight of his words hang in the air like smoke, letting the audience feel the sting before delivering the counter that would redefine the narrative. Every pause was intentional, each fraction of a second an invisible drumbeat that built suspense and commanded attention. Her eyes scanned the crowd, moving with deliberate precision, acknowledging the allies who had murmured support, the skeptical observers who had doubted her composure, and the cameras capturing every heartbeat of the moment. Giuliani shifted in his seat, papers rattling, his smirk faltering as the room's energy subtly pivoted. This was no ordinary rebuttal. This was a study in poise, strategy, and rhetorical mastery. Crockett's calm exterior was a weapon, and each breath, each measured word, a blow to the facade of arrogance standing before her. "When you call someone a mistake," Crockett continued, her voice gaining a controlled resonance, "you reveal more about your own failures than theirs. Every claim, every insult is a mirror, and right now, it's reflecting the very arrogance and short-sightedness that blinds so many from justice." The words struck like precision-guided arrows, quiet but piercing, penetrating the ego Giuliani had built like armor. The room collectively leaned forward, drawn into the cadence of a speech that felt both timeless and immediate. Like a courtroom drama and a political spectacle fused into one. The villain's composure cracked. Giuliani's fingers twitched, tapping papers that no longer served as shields but as markers of unease. The smile that had once signaled dominance now faltered, a visible fissure of discomfort spreading across his face. Allies exchanged nervous glances, sensing that the tide had irrevocably shifted. Murmurs erupted in fragmented whispers as the audience absorbed the audacity and brilliance of Crockett's articulation. Every subtle gesture, every calibrated glance, reinforced the power dynamic quietly inverting before their eyes. Crockett didn't rush. She allowed the silence to swell, letting anticipation accumulate like charged electricity. Each heartbeat was amplified by the crowd's collective attention. Social media feeds, live streaming the event, were already buzzing, viewers sensing that something historic was unfolding. The deliberate pacing of her words was mesmerizing. No shout, no exaggerated theatrics, just a meticulous orchestration of authority and dignity. The tension built in layers, each line a measured strike, each pause a subtle, invisible weight pressing down on Giuliani's unraveling poise. Then the crescendo. She leaned in slightly toward the microphone, eyes locking with his for just a moment, and delivered the line that would forever mark the encounter. "You can call me a mistake, but history will remember who fought with integrity and who fell to arrogance." The room exhaled collectively, a ripple of astonishment washing through every corner. Cameras captured the moment as if time itself had paused. Giuliani's face betrayed shock, the faint trace of a smile breaking and vanishing almost instantly, replaced by a visible flush of frustration. Allies shuffled papers trying to reassert control, but the narrative had already shifted irrevocably. The audience responded in waves, gasps, subtle nods, whispered exclamations. Some held their breath, recognizing the gravity of the retort. Others allowed themselves the thrill of vindication. Social media erupted even as the words echoed in real time, hashtags trending before the sentence had even concluded. Your Crockett clapback, your Mick drop moment, political justice. Clips began circulating, overlaying her poised expression with captions highlighting the savage precision of her response. Analysts would later describe the moment as a modern passing of the torch in political rhetoric, a lesson in strategic calm overpowering bluster. Crockett remained composed, scanning the room one last time before stepping back slightly, her posture unshaken. The silence she had cultivated now transformed into energy, the kind that lingers, reverberates, and refuses to be ignored. Giuliani's attempt at recovery faltered. Every subsequent word he spoke seemed muted against the force of her delivered truth. The moral clarity of her statement had shifted the lens of perception, leaving him on the defensive, the room, and indeed the nation, bearing witness. The mic drop was literal and symbolic. Her words weren't just a rebuttal. They were a claim of moral high ground, a demonstration that composure paired with courage could dismantle even the most brazen provocations. The scene was cinematic in its simplicity and devastating in its impact, the quiet power of truth, articulated with precision, overpowering the noise of arrogance. As the cameras panned, the audience erupted into subtle but undeniable applause, murmurs of admiration mixing with stunned silence. Giuliani's smirk had vanished, replaced by the awareness that he had underestimated the very person he sought to demean. Crockett's response had transcended the moment. It became a viral phenomenon in the making, destined to dominate conversations across media platforms, from television panels to TikTok compilations. And yet the final layer of suspense lingered. The room itself had frozen, absorbing the magnitude of the exchange, but the real explosion was yet to be realized. As snippets and clips spread across social feeds, debates ignited, and pundits dissected every gesture and phrase, it became clear this wasn't just a political clapback. It was a masterclass in strategy, courage, and the power of measured response. The cameras captured the lingering expressions, the collective realization of onlookers, and the subtle shuffles of Giuliani, now visibly rattled. Every second stretched, holding the audience in a suspenseful limbo, a moment of pause pregnant with anticipation for the viral wave that would soon engulf the nation. Crockett had not just defended herself. She had transformed an attack into a statement, arrogance into humility, an insult into a lesson in dignity. And as the room processed the magnitude, the final thought crystallized. The live audience was stunned, but the real explosion was about to go viral. The moment Crockett's words landed, the room seemed suspended in disbelief. But the second the cameras cut to the live feed, the digital world ignited. Social media exploded with fragments of the encounter, a single 15-second clip showing her calm, piercing gaze, the subtle tilt of her head, and the devastating line that had left Giuliani scrambling. Hashtags like #Crockett Clapback, mic drop moment, and political justice skyrocketed within minutes, trending nationwide. On Twitter, feeds filled with reposts, reactions, and endless comment chains dissecting every nuance. TikTok creators layered her words over dramatic music, transforming her response into viral moments that would dominate screens for days. News networks scrambled to cover the viral incident. Political commentators, analysts, and pundits debated the significance in real time. Some called it a defining moment in modern political discourse. Others, reluctantly, praised her composure, highlighting the rare ability to turn a personal insult into a lesson in dignity. Morning shows replayed the clip, breaking down the timing, cadence, and emotional resonance of her delivery. Even talk show hosts, who were often critics, found themselves acknowledging the mastery of the moment, admitting that Crockett's response had transcended partisan divides to create a shared cultural event. Celebrity voices joined the chorus. Figures known for advocacy and social justice praised her poise and courage. Quotes like, "She didn't just respond, she redefined what it means to confront arrogance," flooded Instagram posts and retweets. Memes proliferated. Side-by-side images of Giuliani's flustered expression and Crockett's calm, commanding presence became emblematic of the clash between recklessness and reason. Fans celebrated, sharing screenshots, tagging friends, and declaring that Crockett had given voice to a moment of collective frustration. Turning insult into empowerment, the ripple effect extended into political circles. Fellow lawmakers and community leaders expressed support, some privately at first, then publicly, recognizing that Crockett's performance had shifted public perception. Opponents reevaluated their strategies. Critics who had once underestimated her found themselves reconsidering her influence and reach. Every forum, from political podcasts to late-night commentary, dissected the exchange, amplifying her words and reinforcing the notion that this was more than a viral moment. It was a statement of principle. Fan communities erupted in validation. Social media threads, Reddit discussions, and Facebook groups buzzed with admiration for her composure and intellect. Individuals shared personal reflections. "Finally, someone turned arrogance into a teaching moment," wrote one user. Others framed it in broader societal terms, linking Crockett's poise to ideals of dignity, courage, and integrity in public life. The incident became a mirror reflecting collective frustration with empty rhetoric, a reminder that measured truth carries power beyond the immediate moment. Meanwhile, Giuliani's allies scrambled. Analysts noted his attempts to regain footing, issuing statements or explanations, but the narrative had already shifted. Clips of his faltering reactions were edited, shared, and remixed, often juxtaposed with Crockett's commanding presence, further solidifying the perception that she had decisively claimed the moral and rhetorical high ground. Every misstep in his response only amplified her impact, turning what had been intended as a simple confrontation into a sweeping cultural statement. Yet amid the digital roar, a deeper lesson began to emerge. Beyond the memes, hashtags, and endless replayed clips, audiences sensed a universal truth. Composure, intellect, and principled courage could dismantle even the most brazen attacks. Crockett had shown that a single moment, delivered with clarity and dignity, could ripple across media, politics, and culture, shaping conversations and setting a new standard for public discourse. The applause online and offline was immediate, but the resonance of her performance promised to last far beyond the initial viral storm. And so, while the world dissected every frame and debated every word, an underlying realization crystallized. This wasn't merely a clash of personalities or a viral media moment. It was a demonstration that integrity and courage, when paired with sharp intelligence, could redefine power dynamics, challenge arrogance, and inspire millions. The room had been stunned. The internet had erupted. But beyond the digital frenzy, beyond the news cycles and trending hashtags, there was a deeper lesson waiting to be understood. In the aftermath of the viral moment, as hashtags trended and memes circulated, the deeper significance of Crockett's response began to crystallize. This was more than a clapback. It was a masterclass in dignity under pressure. Every viewer who had witnessed the exchange could feel the weight of her presence, calm, unwavering, and resolute. She hadn't merely defended herself, she had reframed the confrontation, transforming what was intended as humiliation into a statement of principle. In that instant, Crockett showed the world that composure, clarity, and courage are not just virtues, they are weapons of influence that outshine arrogance and spectacle. The room, once filled with tension and the echoes of Giuliani's insult, now vibrated with the resonance of truth. Crockett's words, delivered with measured precision, reverberated beyond the chamber, reaching millions of eyes and ears. Each phrase carried intention, each pause amplified meaning. By refusing to mirror anger with anger, she demonstrated that moral authority requires no shouting, that influence is built through integrity, and that the loudest voice is often the one measured by thought, not volume. In this quiet power, viewers recognized a universal lesson. Attacks may provoke, but they cannot corrupt the steadfast pursuit of justice and respect. Crockett's triumph was emblematic of a broader principle. In a world inundated with noise, sensationalism, and bluster, her composure reminded audiences that truth and courage resonate far deeper than momentary outrage. Every insult aimed at her, every attempt to provoke, became an opportunity to model dignity. Her response transformed public perception, not through theatrics, but through authenticity. Millions online absorbed a potent message. The true measure of leadership lies not in dominating the conversation, but in elevating it, in turning conflict into clarity, and in choosing courage over capitulation. The emotional crescendo of this moment did more than silence a room. It inspired pride, hope, and reflection. For viewers who had felt marginalized, dismissed, or silenced, Crockett's victory was vicarious empowerment. Her calm defiance symbolized the potential within each individual to stand firm against injustice, to navigate hostility without losing oneself, and to reclaim narrative control with poise and principle. She became more than a political figure in this instant. She became a touchstone for courage, a reminder that dignity is contagious and that integrity commands attention where spectacle fails. The lesson rippled outward, reaching social media communities, classrooms, and dinner table conversations alike. Analysts dissected the encounter, but the true takeaway was visceral, almost instinctive. Composure under pressure transcends partisan divides, reminding all who watch that the impact of measured action outweighs the fleeting satisfaction of provocation. By choosing to respond with intelligence and grace, Crockett reframed the conversation, turning an attempted attack into a universal testament to courage, wisdom, and moral clarity. Crockett's performance, both viral and virtuous, illustrated a timeless truth. In moments of confrontation, it is not the loudest voice that commands respect, but the one that embodies steadiness, principle, and vision. Her victory was a quiet roar, a demonstration that service, truth, and moral courage echo far longer than personal insults or political theatrics. For a generation searching for role models, for guidance in moments of challenge, Crockett's example became a beacon. In this final reflection, audiences felt a surge of inspiration and resolve. They saw that power wielded with dignity is transformative, that courage paired with intellect is unstoppable, and that a single moment of principled action can ignite widespread admiration and change. Giuliani's words had aimed to diminish, but Crockett's response amplified the values she stood for: justice, integrity, and hope. And so as the dust settled and the online storm quieted, the moral of the story remained unmistakable. In a world of shouting, dignity speaks louder. In a world of spectacle, composure carries weight. And in a moment meant to divide, courage united viewers in shared admiration and inspired belief. Grit met grace, defiance met principle, and the result was unforgettable. A lesson in how truth and courage always outlast arrogance. And there it was, the moment that would define a generation of viewers and reverberate across every screen: Jasmine Crockett's unforgettable clapback. When Rudy Giuliani attempted to brand her a mistake, the world watched, anticipating chaos. Instead, Crockett delivered a masterclass in composure, intellect, and courage, a response so precise and powerful that it silenced not only the room, but millions online. This was not just a rebuttal. It was a declaration of dignity, a statement that principles triumph over provocation, and a reminder that true leadership is measured by poise under pressure. For everyone watching, the lesson was immediate and personal. Integrity is louder than insult, and courage resonates longer than theatrics. Every viewer who felt marginalized, dismissed, or underestimated saw themselves reflected in her resilience. This was a moment to share, to discuss, and to let echo through networks, classrooms, and living rooms alike. If dignity matters to you, spread this story. Let Crockett's composure serve as a beacon, a standard for how we respond when confronted by arrogance or attempts to diminish us. And yet, beyond the applause, beyond the viral shares and trending hashtags, lies the enduring truth. Justice isn't a relic of the past. It isn't a concept confined to history books or courtrooms. Justice is a living voice, carried forward in each act of courage, each measured response, each commitment to doing what is right despite pressure or opposition. Jasmine Crockett's response reminds us that this voice is ours to wield. Her moment of triumph is more than viral. It is timeless, a call for every citizen to uphold truth, dignity, and principle in every arena of life. So, let this be more than a video watched. Let it be a movement shared. Stand with courage. Speak with clarity. And remember, justice isn't a word from the past, it's the voice we carry forward.